But enough about those boring head knockers in the paint and offensive rebounding. Let's get to Reed Sheppard. Let's get to Reed Sheppard, who, just as I was worried about him early in the season, the ball just hadn't gone in for him that much. It looked like he wasn't as comfortable shooting the three. And now he is really starting to emerge for this Rockets team.
The basic stats on it are impressive, and small sample size. Reed Sheppard has played 221 minutes so far, so it's important to remember that. However, 65% true shooting on 20% usage, and 50%, yes, 50% on 9.1 threes per 36. And I know you want to talk about the threes, but I want to flag this because this is going to come up. 49% on twos. That was a huge concern last year, and there's some real steps forward there.
Yeah, it is. And I think that ultimately, if you're talking about him truly being a star, that's the number that's going to have to get better. But the number one thing is just that the ball's going in for him. And remember, he shot over 50% on threes at Kentucky. That was something that people were very, very excited about with him. And he is 8 of 12 on threes off the dribble. And I think the most exciting thing from him that I saw as I broke down his film was his pick and roll ability has gotten a lot better. And that begins with his handle. I thought last year, he'd kind of been this combo guard. He'd never really been, growing up, the guy with the ball. And so that was something, him getting into pick and rolls, running a lot of pick and rolls. That was just something that he needed a lot of work on. And they tried him as the backup point guard a year ago behind Fred VanVleet. That didn't really work. He ended up out of the rotation. Then he got hurt and had a couple of big games in the G League, but that was pretty much it for him. Now, though, he's just much better with his handle, and he can get to spots. It's still not perfect, right? You can attack his dribble some. We saw him struggle in that opener against OKC, as everyone has so far this season. But he's just a little quicker behind the back, settling himself. If he's attacking, he can slow down. He can set guys up for the screen. He can come off the screen. And then one of the things that I loved in his college film that's starting to show up even more is that he just is really shooting the ball well off dribble. And that 8 of 12, I mean, that's, some of them are against a drop coverage, but others are with guys kind of right in his face or trailing him around the screen. So he's getting those off quickly. And then the thing that made me most excited about him as a prospect, that probably the reason he was number one on my board, admittedly in a weak draft, was I really love what he's doing as a mid-range shooter. And I think he can get to be very good at that. And especially with this improved ball handling ability now, he can snake the pick and roll. He can get to either elbow, and he gets off the ground really fast. And he jumps too. He is a good leaper. And especially going up against this team when your bigger defenders, or being on this Rockets team rather, where your bigger defenders are going to be on an Amen Thompson, or they're going to be on Kevin Durant, then he's usually being guarded by the other team's point guard. And so he's got the ability to get his shot off very quickly from that range. And so as a pick and roll player, he's starting to look a lot better, and he's starting to really throw in some nice ball handling tricks as well. So I've been really impressed by what I've seen from him just in general, and especially the stats look great too.
I'm really impressed also with the steps. It's always incremental with these talented players and so you need to see their strengths, their calling cards look good at some point in the early going, and we're getting that from Reed Sheppard, what we didn't last year. And we had this conversation. People could go back and listen to it when we did the draft scout on him. You and I were both. I had him second, but I still was still high on him, but had him higher than he was selected. And it was also how Reed Sheppard's jump shot could make the rest of his game sing. And so that's why the ball handling and all that is important, because you can use the shot to set up the drive. And you brought up this idea of how Reed Sheppard's getting defended by point guards, by more like-sized players. Shepard isn't the biggest guy, but he can jump reasonably well for his size. Is the ripple effect the other way? If Reed Sheppard gets good enough that teams have to throw a stronger resource at him, that makes life so much easier for the rest of the Rockets.
No, it does. And we'll see if he's getting to that point now. He's not going to finish the year shooting over 50% from three. I feel pretty confident on that. No one has ever done that other than Steve Kerr with the shorter line. I can't remember whether, Adele Curry or something did that back in the 90s as well. The other thing I want to talk about with him is just the way that he's attacking more. And I noted again that he was not one of these big stars coming up, even on that Kentucky team. He was coming off the bench. He was playing with Dillingham. And so I like that he now has ramped up the aggressiveness quite a bit. There are a few times where it's gotten to be a little bit much, right? There's one where they threw a pass to him and it bounced off his feet at the 3-point. Then he just ran as the ball was rolling along, picked it up, and then just shot it over a contest after picking the ball up the ground. That's a pretty difficult one. But then there are other times where the aggressiveness has looked pretty good. He had one against Lou Dort where he just got going off a screen, going to his right, and then was able to stop and pop and get a shot on Dort. Now, Dort doesn't have the longest arms, but he is an all-defense level of player. He also had this great move in transition against the Pistons, where it was almost Steph-like, put a guy in the mix, create space by jumping back and shoot the three. That's still in the nascent stages at this point, but I love that aggressiveness. And it's really, to me, the ball handling. And also, you just become a better shooter when you become a better ball handler off the dribble as well. Now, in terms of weaknesses still, he doesn't really have a great plan once he gets below the free throw line. It's been this kind of janky hook shot that he's tried a couple of times that doesn't work very well going along the lane line. I haven't seen him make that one yet, and it's usually pretty contested. I think he doesn't really have any kind of a slow step game. He still is mostly going one speed once he actually gets inside the arc. He's changing speeds a little bit more just in terms of setting up screens. And then isolation is not awesome either at this point in time. But the beauty of it again is you move him into some of your main units a little bit more. They've got Josh Okogie in that spot right now, but he's going to be guarded by someone bad. And at this point in time, I think he can be pretty effective there. They're also running some off-ball screening stuff for him. And then on-ball screener, I think, is where he could be really effective as well with the men, with KD. As a pop man, he's working on that footwork. Also, he's quick enough to change the angle of the screen. He's smart. How about on defense? I know you didn't concentrate on him as much as I did for this episode, but what have you seen for him there?
So going back to the scout, I thought that Reed Sheppard's possession by possession defense was a little bit overrated by people, but that the defensive playmaking was real, even if he wasn't going to have the latitude from his professional coaches, Ime Udoka in this case, as he was going to at Kentucky with Calipari, where Calipari, he just got to freelance. There were times where he was guarding a talented shooter on the perimeter and just dug down and got a steal. But the defensive playmaking has been real. I thought it was a huge part of the Rockets' comeback win against the Bucks, where they dominated in crunch time. He had 2 steals in quick succession, one of which he hit a 3. And overall in the season, 3.1% steal rate, 1.8% block rate for a guy who doesn't have immense physical gifts. That's extremely impressive. And with the Rockets, and this was again expected, he's doing that aggressively, but not in a way that I think is compromising his team, because the overall talent level of NBA players is so much higher that you can't freelance. You can't just go full shark all the time. And so I think he's picking his spots more judiciously than he did at Kentucky because he had to.
Yeah, he fouled a lot last year too. I think he's managed to quell that to some degree this year. But the thing about his defensive playmaking is he's just relentless in a way that other guys aren't, right? If he'll try to do a little run and jump and go for the ball, and the guy will kind of dribble away from him a little bit and think he's in the clear, and Reed will just keep going and then knock the ball away from him from behind. Or he might go for a strip, miss it, and then he'll use his other hand to go for the strip instead and get him on that one. So he just is continually trying to make plays. And yeah, he's small. He's going to get attacked some. He's really the only guy in their rotation who's not just a physical specimen, basically. So teams are going to go after him. But I've always talked about this with guys like Doug McDermott, who's maybe the worst defensive playmaker in NBA history, where it's one thing if you have the size advantage on the guy and you can beat him. It's another if you just are not worried in the slightest that the guy might make a play on you and take the ball or bother you. If you just, I can 100% predetermine that I can get to this spot. The guy's not going to knock it away from me, and this move is going to work. And Reed, he makes guys uncomfortable in that way. So, because at least, you have to protect around him, even when he's on the ball. And then when he's off the ball, he's going to make plays as a help defender. So really exciting to see this from Reed Sheppard. Still has to work on some of his interior game, but this is a massive step forward for him. And he looks, at least for right now, to be on track to be the sort of player that we thought he could be when he was drafted number 3 overall in 2024.